Charlie Munger said it best. The first 100,000 is a bitch. He also said that you need to scratch and claw your way to that first 100,000 by any means necessary. Getting to that 100,000, especially if you're starting at zero, may seem like an improbable task, but it may not be that far out of reach. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Financial Wellness Planning. My name is Derek Coffey, and I'm the founder of FWP. And when it comes to bettering your financial situation, it's going to require goals. Whether you want to stop living paycheck to paycheck, or you want to save up your first $1,000, or even retire a millionaire, it's going to require you to set goals. As you begin on your path towards your first 100,000, there are a couple of smaller goals that you need to hit first. The first one of which is to stop living paycheck to paycheck. When you get a handle on your finances, you can begin building for your financial future. The second thing you need to do is set aside the $1,000 per person in your household, and this is going to act as your emergency fund. Once you've checked off those first two goals, that's when you can set your sights on your first 100,000. The reason that $100,000 needs to be your first savings goal is because once you attain that level of wealth, your net worth is going to explode. And the reason this is due to two components: scale and compounding. Now, by scale, we're referring to the fact that the more money you have, the more money you can make. And that may seem like a very obvious statement, but unless you truly look at it by the numbers, it may not hit home. So what you see on your screen is the difference between having $100 invested and $1 million invested. And each of these account values are receiving a 7% rate of return for 1 year. At the end of the first year, if you had $100 invested with a 7% rate of return, you would end the year with $107. At $10,000, you would end the year with $10,700. And then if you had $1 million, you would end the year with $1,070,000. And that's the point I want to make about scale. If you have a lot of money invested and that money is working for you, the more money that you're going to make. So now that we understand that large sums of money make large sums of money, we need to look at what happens when that growth compounds. So we understand that $100 growing at 7% for 1 year is going to equate to $107 at the end of year one. But what happens if that account grows again at 7%? Well, at the end of year two, you're going to have $114.49. As we add zeros to those beginning balances, that compound interest is going to get larger. So with $10,000, we had $10,700 at the end of year one. At the end of year two, we have $11,449. And keep in mind, we haven't added any additional money. This is simply the compounding growth that is occurring within the account. If we go down to the $1 million account, we ended year one with $1,070,000. At the end of year two, we ended with $1,144,900. And the $1 million account is going to look the best. There's no question about that. Over the course of those 2 years, the average growth was $72,500 per year, which is higher than the average median income in the United States. But to get to that level of wealth, you have to go through those other ones first. The reason that we want to zero in on that $100,000 savings is due to the growth that's occurring within the account. With $100 or $1,000 or even $10,000, the rates of return are great, but the dollar amount of the return isn't that great. With $100,000, if you earn 7%, that's $7,000 that's going to be added to your account balance. In year two, you're going to add $7,490 to that account balance. So over those 2 years, your $100,000 account has been growing at just over $600 per month. And that's the reason $100,000 is so important. If you're growing at $600 per month, you're going to accumulate more wealth faster than if you're only earning $60 a month. And again, these are very obvious statements, but breaking it down by the numbers is what should help motivate you to set $100,000 as your first savings goal. So how long is it going to take you to hit that $100,000 level? Well, we're going to work through an example. We're going to assume that we're going to save $10,000 per year, or $833 per month. Now, before you click away, stick with me. I'm going to make this more applicable later in the video, but I want you to work with me through these numbers to understand that getting to that first 100,000 is the most important. If we assume that we have a 7% rate of return, we're going to hit that first 100,000 in just over 7.5 years. To get to 200,000, it's going to take about 12 and a half years. 300,000 is just over 16 years. 400,000 is going to take just over 19 years. And then in 21 and a half years, you're going to accumulate your first $500,000. And I know we're looking out into the future. 7.5 years from now seems like a long time. It is a long time. But if you're disciplined with your savings, then in about 7.5 years, you could hit that first $100,000 of savings. So we figured out how long it's going to take to hit 100,000, 200,000, all the way up to $500,000 in savings. But what I want to point out to you is the time increments between each $100,000. We determined that the first 100,000 was going to take right at 7.5 years. The next $100,000 is going to happen in just under 5 years. To get to 300,000, it's 3.67 years. To 400,000, it's 2.91 years. From 400 to 500 is 2.42 years. The reason that these time increments are decreasing is due to scale and compounding interest. What you'll notice is this orange line and this blue line. This blue line is your net worth. The orange line is what it cost you. The orange line represents that $833 per month. The blue line is what you actually have in your account. The difference between these two is compounding interest. Scale and compounding interest is what makes your net worth explode. Now, the other thing that I want to point out to you in this example specifically is the distance from your first $500,000 to your second $500,000. So we determined that it's going to take you about 21 and a half years to hit $500,000 in your savings. The distance between 500,000 and $1 million is 8.25 years. So in about a third of the time that it took you to get to your first $500,000, you're going to make your second half. And this is the importance of scale and compounding interest. So how am I going to make this a little bit more applicable to you? Well, I'm going to show you another example. So saving $10,000 a year may seem crazy, but it's not that crazy. A lot of you work for a company that has an employer-sponsored retirement account, and these come in the form of a 401k or a 403b. If you're married and you're bringing in $100,000 a year as a household, and you work for a company that offers a 5% dollar-for-dollar match on your contributions, then you're well on your way to saving $10,000 a year. If you make $100,000 and you contribute 5%, that's $5,000. If your employer matches that, there's $5,000. So all of a sudden, we're saving $10,000 per year. And it's only costing you half of that $833 a month. So out of your own pocket, out of your own check, it's costing you $416.67 per month. And this is the power of the employer match. And that's what we talk about. When you stop living that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle and you have cash set aside, you can start taking advantage of your employer sponsored account. So if we use the same scenario of saving that $10,000 per year with the same 7% rate of return, this graph should look the same as the example we did before, but it doesn't. What we're not factoring in are raises. If you work for a company, you're more than likely going to receive a raise over time. And we don't know what that's going to average out to, but we're going to assume 3%. So in the first year, you're going to be putting in $833 per month. If you each receive a 3% raise, then your contributions as well as the match that you receive from your company are going to go up by 3%. So in year 2, you're going to be contributing $857 per month total. And this is going to go up every time you get a raise. If we factor in these raises, then you're going to start hitting your milestones a little bit sooner. At first, you're not going to see much of a difference. But as time goes on, your path to $1 million gets a little bit shorter. So getting to 100,000 is still going to take you right at 7 years. So it may shave off 6 months, but it's still 6 months faster. You're going to hit 200,000 just before the end of year 12. You're going to hit 500,000 just before the end of year 20. And then right around year 27, you're going to hit your $1 million. In the last example, it took 30 years to get to that $1 million threshold. But in this example, counting in your raises, you could shave off 3 years on your path to $1 million. And in the end, this final number is just shy of $1.4 million. So in that same 30-year time frame, we're talking about $400,000 more in your investment accounts. Long story short, get your company match. Getting to your first $100,000 is no small feat, especially if you start at zero. But if you're eligible for a company match, then half of that work could be taken care of for you. The only way to get yourself in a position to get your full employer match is to start getting a handle on your money. Knowing what your money is doing and where it is going is how you can make the financial decisions that you need to make to get to your first 100,000. If your household fits the example that we went over, where you're making $100,000 a year and you're eligible for a 5% dollar for dollar match, then you're 7.5 years away from hitting $100,000. After that, you're 20 years away from your first million. Setting $100,000 as your first savings goal isn't as crazy as it seems. Get a handle on your money, get your employer match, and watch your accounts begin to grow. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If this video or any of the other videos that I've put out has provided you value, then hit that subscribe button. Give the video a like. If there's someone you know that hasn't started saving towards their financial future simply because they don't understand how easy it could be, then send this video to them. Maybe it'll get them on the right path. But I want to thank you again for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.